Congressman Tom Emmer of Minnesota, who also happens to be the GOP's campaign chief, revealed his party's plans to defeat Democrats in the midterms by, quote, labeling their agenda socialist and targeting legislation that doesn't receive bipartisan support. He also says Republicans plan to, quote, add more women and minorities to the party.
Interesting. So Democratic strategist and maestro Roger Fisk, culture reporter at The Federalist, Emily Jasinski, they join us now to discuss. Emily, let me start with you. This sounds an awful lot like the Democratic strategy of 2020 minus the socialism, and instead just very high on the identity politics. What exactly is going on here?
Yeah, I think this is a bid for the suburbs. Republicans have learned and they've tested in the suburbs that the socialism messaging works really well for them there, particularly with women. And that's a demographic that they are freaked out about right now, educated suburban women. It's a demographic that they really lost over the course of the Trump administration. And so they're eager to get it back. And I think that's probably what this is signaling. The identity politics part of this, I think, is just really unfortunate, like establishment Republican corporatized politics, and it's not going to work for them. We could have told them that 5 years ago, let alone right now in 2021. So it's just another signal that I'm not sure they've learned the right lessons.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Roger, I don't know what their focus groups are saying, but color me skeptical that the socialism messaging does work with women in the suburbs, because they tried that pretty hard with Trump this time around, this last election cycle, and they did horribly with women in the suburbs. So I'm not sure why they'd be going back for more on that particular messaging, if that's the demographic group they're trying to win back.
Well, first off, good morning, Crystal and Sagar, and wonderful to be here with Emily. They're still kind of addicted to this framework of this cartoonish vision of Biden, right? You would think after trying it for the better part of 2020 and trying to ram a square peg into a socialist hole and coming up short and failing, that they might reconsider that. The conversation around socialism is very interesting. First off, if Emmer's comment had gone into the next paragraph, I'm assuming after lamenting the absence of legislation with Republican support, that he probably would have gone on to say that they would intend to primary anyone that did support Democratic legislation. And then last is 13 of the 15 states most dependent on federal aid are red states. Maine and New Mexico, for some reason, are the blue states. But when we get into a conversation about socialism and dependence on the federal government and dependence on income redistribution, that's not necessarily going to go too well for these folks.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Emily, to your point about the women in the suburbs, so as I understand it, here's what happened, which is that the socialism message around taxes and also did not land. But what did was the socialism message, which was rooted in a defund the police message, is what landed. Now, I don't think that this is what that sounds like at all. So with absent, basically, look, we don't have riots. It's not the same social situation. Well, how is that going to fare in 2022 in a more dynamic economy with a lot more vaccines that have gone out to people?
Okay, I'm so glad that you put it that way, because it's such an important distinction. It's that these Republicans in D.C. thought the socialism framework was working, and they were really disappointed that Joe Biden was the nominee, by the way, because they couldn't really use the socialism messaging as effectively as they had hoped with somebody like Kamala Harris. But this is like such a key distinction, is they thought that, like, wow, all of these people are so excited for limited government and liberty. And no, it's actually really more of a cultural thing. It is about defund the police. It's about tying in immigration and all of those other issues. Socialism, the word, packs more of a cultural punch to the extent that it's effective in their focus groups than it does a Koch sort of limited government one. And so, yeah, you're completely right to say that the challenges are going to continue to exist if you're relying on this messaging, and then the marriage of it with this like weird corporatized identity politics that Emmer was gesturing towards is just clearly that they're not going in the right direction with this.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Roger, the other thing they're obviously really leaning into is the surge of migrants at the border and Biden's handling of that. I mean, that's been, all over Fox News. That's clearly something they're scheduling visits to the border, all of that. They're clearly leaning very heavily into that. That worked for Trump pretty well in 2016, helped him become president of the United States. Didn't work as well for them in 2018 when they did this whole migrant caravan thing, and Democrats still made large gains. I sort of have a theory that these immigration issues are they're much more salient and pack a greater political punch when the economic conditions are not good. So if you have an economy that is roaring back, whether it's, Biden's doing or not, Do you think that that messaging is going to pack the same punch that it did back in 2016 when Trump relied on it to both win the Republican primary and ultimately end up in the White House?
Yeah, one of the interesting things, of many interesting things, is the complete non-transferability of Trump's messaging and mojo and everything else. When everyone else tries to run those same plays or tries those lines, it just doesn't land with the same way. It just doesn't have the same kind of red meat effect on the base, for example. So there's something about the inability of people to kind of echo or replicate that. The thing that the larger dynamic, and immigration plays into this, as long as the Biden administration follows through and just takes sober steps to dial up the policy here, is that for the first time really in my life, the Democrats are kind of the adult in the room, right? The Republicans have essentially hollowed themselves out. And you see these kind of MAGA absolutists like the Jordans and the Meadows and the Zeldins that just have this kind of glassed over certainty about the fever dreams of the former president. And that allows Democrats to basically just sit there and say, look, we know how to take care of roads and bridges, and all the kind of stability that used to be the GOP brand has been completely surrendered. So in a sense, the Republicans have dug themselves this hole by hollowing themselves out and throwing in with the whole kind of MAGA movement, which is much more about the fever dreams of one unbalanced individual than it is about some vision or some policy vision in a political or a policy context.
God, I wish we had an hour to talk to you guys, because I could keep that one going on forever. Unfortunately, we have so much more that we need to milk out of you, so stay tuned. We will be back with Team Rising right after this.